Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of Cinemental.
Now this I can do.
I can't compete with you physically, and you're no match for my brains.
I don't give a crap if you covered yourself in peanut butter and had a 15-hooker gangbang.
I'm Steve Obicki, and as usual, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Hassan Godwin and Latham Conger III. Good day, guys. How's it going?
Hello. Good. Hello.
What do you say we jump right into some news that gives us fits?
Move!
So one little bit I want to get. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this simply because I fucking don't like this guy and I don't want to give him any airtime. But the fact that he did this just reinforces my position on what kind of scumbag he is.
Okay.
So in reaction to the fact that the news bit that came out about Disney announcing there are currently no plans in place for a Deadpool Part 3, Rob Liefeld posted a pic last week of Deadpool holding up a dead Mickey Mouse. This guy is a piece of crap. Okay. He has thousands upon thousands of fans. People even claim to love his art, which I obviously can't get on board with. And Lathan, this is a comic book thing.
Yep, I'm looking him up.
But look up Rob Liefeld. It's Liefeld.
Got him.
Captain America.
Got it.
It's one of my favorite. It's my favorite bad image of all time.
That's the torpedo. That's always the torpedo for him.
I know, right?
I don't like his smile right off the bat.
I know Hassan knows the guy who invented Deadpool with him.
Yeah, the Fabian Nicieza.
Who technically really created him because he was the writer. Rob might have created the look, but Fabian essentially created the character.
Yeah, the basically the man we see on screen is because of Fabian. The
personality,
the personality,
correct. Yeah. Rob likes to go around, claiming creation of Cable, and Wheezy wrote Cable, and Rob never gives Wheezy any credit, and that's just he's one of those guys. He's a glamour hound. He's not a very talented artist overall, I don't think. I mean, he's gotten light years better than he was back when he was really famous for it, which is kind of funny. But as a person, he's just not anyone I ever want to deal with.
He's an interesting, and I'm being diplomatic about saying he's interesting. He's a very interesting character. His art is interesting. I'm using interesting as a euphemism. And
I get it.
I feel bad. When I was a kid, I used to copy a lot of his stuff. Because I thought that was the hippest stuff. I didn't realize that some of his earlier stuff was being literally rescued by his inkers. And then when he became a big enough name and he started drawing on his own or hiring his own inkers, then we all said, well, what happened to his art? And then, you find out as an industry secret, nothing happened to his art. He just didn't have people saving his art anymore. He didn't have people correcting anatomy and fixing feet and all the other crazy stuff that he does now.
Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to jump that out there because it really annoyed me when I saw it. He's a baby is what it comes down to. He's a little baby with a very big platform. So keep crying, Rob. Funny as it is, I actually saw a post this week of something else referring to Deadpool, that there's a rumor that they're going to replace all the Stan Lee cameos in future Marvel movies with Deadpool.
Oh, all right.
Oh,
which would be odd and off-putting to a certain extent. But
yeah, I don't know if that'll work.
Because that'll come off as almost mockery, don't you think? It's could be potentially read as mockery of Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And his legacy.
I think,
I mean, look, the idea is funny.
His own cameos can be read as mockery of his own legacy. I mean, come on.
True.
He's always a goofy old man in all his cameos.
But it's always endearing to him his contributions to the universe that we're watching. Yada yada. Yes. I think if they were going to do that and pull it off, they would have had to have started doing that while Stan Lee was still alive doing
Exactly.
it, and then he could just
Exactly.
continue on doing it after it's over.
All right, get George
Have
Lucas,
him rip-
get George Lucas on the phone, and let's pop him in CG.
Fix it in post.
A deep fake.
That's
A
right.
deep fake.
And my last thing is the new rumor out of Disney is that they are considering changing the name of the team, the X-Men, in order to be more inclusive.
Okay, yeah. Well, as soon as you said inclusive,
My only note here is what in the actual fuck?
as soon as you mentioned the word inclusive, my interest in whatever you were going to say or what point was being made left me. That's just, oh boy. All right. It's like saying we're going to remake The Wizard of Oz, but we're not going to have it be the wizard called Oz because we want something more inclusive. So yeah, it's just, you're messing with iconic, comic book stuff, already movie stuff. Why would you do that?
Right.
Why?
I agree. It's one of those it's one of those head shaker stories, and that's what this segment's about. Hassan, what do you got?
That's right.
Not much from that you covered. Apparently, Henry Cavill is back on as Superman, but he is back off as Superman, even though he's back on as Superman.
Yeah, it's like they brought him back to be Superman, but they don't really know.
They have no plan for him. He's written into none of the working scripts that they're using, and they don't have a Man of Steel 2 anywhere in their cabinet. So I guess they'll have to bang that out in the next, they could take the rest of this year to write a Man of Steel script and then keep him on. And Henry Cavill's got The Witcher, so I don't think he's hard up for for work to do. So
No.
Right.
That's
yeah, he could just keep mocking them.
Yeah.
I like Henry Cavill's Superman. I like him in the role. I didn't like. There are many things I didn't like about Man of Steel, and let's not even mention Batman versus Superman. And I like the idea of consolidating, even though we already lost our Batman for that universe. So, I mean, they could get Affleck back, but I mean, they're already doing something else, So
I know.
Look, Affleck's Batman was one of my favorite on-screen Batman depictions of all time, which surprised no one more than me. I was astonished that I liked him as much as I did, especially the fight scenes with him, which are just fantastic. Not the fight scene with him and Superman. That wasn't fantastic at all. There was nothing fantastic about that. So there's that. Marvel is edging their publications more and more towards digital, much to the consternation of some of the industry bigwigs and some of the old school creators. I think it's a bad idea for them to chafe against that. I think that's a saving grace of that industry. And I don't know, and especially the power move that Diamond pulled during the pandemic, which of course they had to do it because of their own viability and because of COVID-19.
Are you talking about DC?
No, Diamond,
with their new distribution deal.
DC has a distribution deal, new distribution deal. Marvel is going straight digital with I think about maybe 4 or 5 of their April titles that didn't come out.
Digital only,
and they're not going to print with them. Some of the important, the unseen types behind the scenes are not happy about it because they think that stepping away from print that prominently is problematic for their bottom line. But it's an adapt or die kind of situation as far as I'm concerned. And like I said, if Diamond tomorrow just decided, look, the comic books are not viable for us anymore as of, effective August 1st, the entire industry would be effed, like it was like pulling the rug out from under them. They should have taken the opportunity while Diamond closed down a month and a half ago to just come up with better options. I mean,
and that's what DC did.
And so too is Marvel with their attitude of going straight digital. But with the point I'm making is that
but that's different. That's a different model, though. I mean, this is they're taking it a different direction now. You see, but I think that is a smart way to go. Obviously, it's softer on their bottom line because producing comics, as you well know, producing comics for digital, is easy. There's no print cost or nothing else. You put all once you've paid for the artwork, for you to then pay again and put it onto paper and print it and distribute it costs. I'm not going to say a lot of money, but to a person doing an independent comic book, it's an appreciable amount of money. To take those files which are probably at least partially, if not completely digital by the endpoint anyway, and merely compressing them into a readable standard comic book container file, there's no cost. There's no cost except for a little time.
Yeah, CBR file or something like that. Absolutely.
But I feel like if Marvel's smart, they'll build up enough digital titles that the people who read physical comics, still read physical comics, will need to go and access some of those. I feel like it's almost like a soft launch. It's a way for them to open up both doors, let some of the water wash back and forth, and get people who are only buying comics in paper format and try and slowly get them on board with the digital mindset. And it's also a way for people who have sort of already gone full digital to kind of come back a little bit. If they start doing these stories that are told partially in one format, partially in another format, you're going to get people who are going to go back, you're going to get the physical people to learn digital, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, you'll be cross-pollinating.
People who are digital.
I think the biggest pushback is coming from, unfortunately, the retailers, and there's kind of, that's to be expected, and I am extremely sympathetic to it. I am not being blasé about their needs at all, but I think retailers have to become as innovative as the comic book companies themselves in order to survive, because the medium kind of has to change, you know. And it's been trying in very aborted sprints to change for maybe the last 20 years. And it's been stymied by a lot of these traditionalists. It won't let it kind of go anywhere. So, you know, I think it's a bad idea to be against the idea of incrementally going digital for some of these things. It's one of, if we're going to talk out of school, it's one of the things that Wizard did wrong.
Oh,
you know,
listen,
it's one. I mean, it's not the only thing by any stretch of the imagination, but
that sounds like a Pandora's box.
That's a whole podcast, not an episode, but literally an ongoing podcast on its own. Totally. So we'll
that might be a solo one by you.
Well, it wouldn't be solo because we've got 25 friends who we could have on as guests who would I'm sure be more than happy to
each with their own story. We could give
each with their own story.
We could give them all their own episode.
That's right.
Great. I'll be in the center square nodding then for that episode. Like this, okay?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Fascinating.
Latham, what do you
Goodbye.
Latham, what do you got?
Okay. Well, along those lines, and that was a quick point I wanted to make too, was a lot of the retailers, whether they were in trouble or not, based on the digital media and the chain, you know, bookstores, everything, the pandemic has accelerated all the demises of some of these entities, and it really sucks because there's no way to bring it back to how it was before. So the only way to go forward is to, like you said, innovate and come up with some things. And I usually have good ideas, and I have none for this. Do you guys have any off the top of your head?
What are you asking? Ideas for what?
About retailers doing
like
something to innovate.
How do you get people in bookstores? How do you get people to buy physical copies of things and not buy them digitally anymore?
I think people have continued to buy physical copies of things. I just think they do it on Amazon instead of going into a bookstore.
And now
I don't think you're going to lose. I don't think you're going to. What's that?
The current situation has made it so much more viable. You know, so much more of a way of life to remotely do your shopping, to remotely, you know, depend on a delivery system to get even the smallest items like trinkets, DVDs, you know, soap, like perishables and stuff like that. So it's going to get worse and worse for retailers, I think, instead of
So when it comes to bookstores, I feel that the people who are Kindle users and Nook users and reading digital books, those people have made the switch. Those people are comfortable reading books on digital. I myself have a tablet with probably 300 or 400 books on it. I'll download a whole series of novels by a particular author if I find one I like, just so I have access to them.
That makes sense.
But I will still take when I go on vacation, regardless of the weight, I still take 6 or 7 physical books with me.
So you're both.
I don't take it, I have tablets with me anyway, but I take books with me to read.
Okay.
And I think that the people who read and like the feel of a book in their hands, I think that number of people is still strong enough to support bookstores. Listen, when it comes to bookstores, you've got Barnes and Noble is your only chain bookstore left. Okay. Other than a few of these multimedia houses that do buying and selling of used product, used DVDs, used books, all that kind of stuff.
New stuff is Barnes and Noble only. That's it.
Right. So
in the U.S.
Yeah, and it's that and Amazon. I really don't feel that there's a whole lot of all the mom and pop bookshops, the ones that are successful. You've got bookshops in New York, and now again, New York and L.A. and big large urban areas are always going to be a little more anomalous because they've got places that have been around for 100 years and they've got a certain level of clientele that will support them and continue to support them. Now, as that clientele ages out, you're going to start to see all those drift away no matter what. Because at the end of the day, we're all moving forward. And eventually we're going to get to the point where maybe there's only, out of 100 people who like to read, maybe there's only 10 of those people who like to read physical books left.
Well, eventually, yeah, it's not going to, I don't see it going up anyway. So it's got only can go down.
It can only go down. That's correct. But that's just innovation and time moving forward.
Sure.
I hope that by the time that I'm dead and gone, that I can still walk into a bookstore and buy a book. Or at least get one delivered to my house. But and listen, the business that I operate is based on the idea that people are still buying books.
Yeah.
I run a publisher. Hello.
Yours are selective though. I mean, yours are, there's no way to.
It's a particular niche, correct?
Yeah.
But that's kind of almost, if you're not Stephen King, you need to pick your battles. You need to have the thing you're making be something that you have a very specific group of people who want it and will want it, and then you move on to the next product.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be market for books for years and years. Maybe books, maybe not bookstores, but the medium of tangible or the tangible item of a book, I think, will be around. There's a necessity for it. I think there's going to be enough people, enough traditionalists, and enough new people who have become, purist or traditionalists that it's just like vinyl. You couldn't get rid of vinyl. Look how many ways of high fidelity we have for music. Look how many different forms of media we have just for music, and there's still vinyl. There's that still exists. It's still a market. It's a niche market, yes, but it's still a viable market. And so I don't think books are going to disappear anytime soon. I think Barnes and Noble is going to slowly and surely push them all into a corner of one of their mega complexes that has everything from Starbucks to even home video is not as prominent anymore.
Yeah,
they're selling furniture and electronics. The last Barnes and Noble, the one on Union Square, the last time I was there, and toys. They've branched out into so many things.
That's a huge one.
So I think they're going to become that kind of like a giant emporium that happens to have books in the corner somewhere. But I don't think books are going to go away anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, going to one of my first little tidbits is AMC Theaters announced today that they don't think they're going to be able to continue sustaining themselves because of the pandemic, and that was obviously depressing for me to read because I don't. I know there's different movie house chains across the country, but they're the number one in the world. And if they go, it could be a domino effect. So I understand part of how they make money, but I guess it would depend if they're leasing a building in a complex or if they built a building. Stevie, you and I have gone to South Barrington 30 plenty of times when you lived here. Sure. And that's a standalone building that was built for them. So what are the costs of running that building right now without having movies there?
Right. Or the AMC in Lincolnshire.
That's a Regal. But
Regal.
oh
Sorry.
no, the other one. Yeah, no, you're right. The one that more towards our friend. Yeah, that's a standalone building too. So you can't tell me these buildings aren't paid off. I mean, they built them themselves. So what are we talking about here? The end of seeing movies in theaters, or a new entity takes the opportunity after the pandemic ends and they find a new way to market movies, or are people done with it at this point? I don't know, but it was depressing to read that today.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I haven't been a tremendous film goer in theaters over the past decade or so, simply because I hate people, and unfortunately people usually populate movie theaters. And unless I go, in the middle of the day or the matinee on a Tuesday afternoon, or possibly the first show of a Sunday afternoon if it's an R-rated film, which is actually what I did for the last film I saw in a theater, which was Fury Road.
Oh, wow. 5 solid years ago.
Yeah, I decided when it came out, I decided right then and there I was going to see that in the theater. You know what? I'm sorry. I take that back. That is not the last film I saw in a theater. I apologize. The last film I saw in a theater was the new Halloween.
Yep. I remember you posting about that.
Yep. The new Halloween I saw in the theater. Also John Wick 3. That's the other one I had to see in a theater.
Actually, you've seen plenty of movies in the theater, and
No. That's literally the last 3 films I've seen. Since 2015. I've seen 3 movies in a theater, because I've lost the ability to not be annoyed by people in a theater. Yep. I can pretty easily shut people out in almost every other place. But and Latham, you understand this more than anyone. The theater for me is the closest thing I have to a church. That's my sacred place. Right. I would rather see every movie I ever watch in my life in a theater. But A, it's not possible. And B, unfortunately, 99% of the time, those theaters have other people in them, and those other people do not feel the same way. In fact, they feel like the public theater, is their living room, and they treat it as such. Yep. And I don't want to sit near people who are going to sit and talk out loud. I don't want to sit near people who are it's one thing if it's behind me, because it's obviously less invasive, but people who are going to pick up their phone and flip the screen on and create this glow off to my right.
That's terrible.
And I'm just like, what the fuck is that? And that's when I start throwing M&Ms. So, and it just escalates from there. So I tend to stay away from movie theaters unless I can by the odds almost ensure that I'll be in a theater with few enough people, or at least enough people where I'm pretty sure they're either going to be soloists like myself, or they're going to be people who, will respect the theater.
Hassan, you want anything to add there?
Yeah.
I know you see a lot of films in the theater, Hassan.
Yeah. And, oh man, it's a tough one. It's a tough one because the theater gods are never good to me either. They will inevitably put someone right behind me who needs to discuss the Declaration of Independence or something like that in the middle of a goddamn film, and I don't understand why we couldn't just discuss this at dinner before the film started. And recently there's been a push to make theaters much more comfortable. They've definitely been cleaner in the last decade. They've made a tremendous effort just making them almost a sterilized environment, which I don't mind. I'm not an ambiance nostalgist, but I would be sad to never be able to see a movie in a theater again by choice. But I can't say that I don't understand why that shared experience is going away. A lot of people don't know how to act. A lot of people don't have respect for anybody else. We've discovered that in the last few months. Just general courtesies are not viable anymore, and quite simply, it's a lot of money for a compromised experience. Now, the grandiose thing about it is there is still something. I don't think there's any substitute for going to see a brand new movie that you've been waiting for a long time in a crowded and enthusiastic theater of movie patrons who want to see the movie that you're going to see. like I would say my last experience with that was Endgame. And everybody had a mutual purpose to be there, and everybody was mutually locked in and mutually interested in seeing what we were seeing. So there was reverence for the experience in and of itself, plus everybody had anticipation of wanting to get as much bang for their buck as humanly possible. So I don't think I would have enjoyed that movie quite as much as I did if I hadn't seen it in a robust theater with a lot of energy, especially for the key moments. I would be upset to give that kind of experience up forever. But
Yes,
again, I understand. It's like Chris Rock says.
There's a difference.
You shouldn't choke your wife, but I understand. It's one of those situations where, I get everything you said, Steve, because I've had every one of those experiences. And I am one of those people that once I start to detect that people aren't, keeping up the social contract that we've all signed to be here, and the money that people are disrespecting the space that I'm in, I can't unnotice them. So that kind of messes up genuinely messes up my experience. So I completely understand. And I think movies kind of deserve it, because they don't enforce any laws once they're, in fact, now that there's assigned seating for these places, it's the restrictions have become completely nullified. The way things are now, you can go into a movie, you pay for one movie, you could go to that movie and just jump into another theater and sit and keep hopping seats until you find a seat that no one bought, and no one's going to come and enforce it.
Right.
So there's people stealing movies. There's people, there's people not respecting the process. There's people not respecting you while you're there. There's people not respecting the environment. The people who work there now, the people who run these things, don't really are kind of non-confrontational and hands off about everything, other than just getting your money at the front door and serving you a sugary snack.
Yeah, they have zero investment beyond
exactly,
getting
and
you through
booting you out of the place. So I would be sad to see the experience go, but I get it. I said all that to say that.
Yeah. Latham and I used to go to a lot of midnight showings of movies, opening night showings, which that is a different experience than just going to see the movie, on a weekday evening, or a week after the movie is opened. Okay, it's not the same.
Yeah. Most of them were pleasurable too. They used to be pleasurable to go to the midnight show.
I agree with you. You get like, and to Hassan's point, you get a room full of people cheering at the right moments, laughing at all the same moments. There is a sort of energy that involved it, and that is definitely not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being at a theater after opening day. I mean, Hassan, the last midnight movie I think I went to, and Hassan, tell me if I'm wrong, I think you went with me, is we went and saw Prometheus, right?
Man, yes. At Palisades. Yes.
Palisades.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that was the last midnight movie that I'd been to. We went and saw Prometheus at the IMAX, I think.
I believe it was. I remember that evening because one of my contacts was irritating me. And yeah.
So And that's not the kind of movie that you're going to have, groups of people standing up and cheering at any point really during it anyway.
Subdued film. I mean, you can't really even do midnight screenings anymore. Like, it's a completely different.
Sure you can.
Well, not around here, not anywhere. Like for the last few years, the places that I usually frequent, they don't even do those things anymore. The environment is completely different. The attitude, the atmosphere is completely different.
You need more event movies too. There's just nothing on the horizon. You can do Marvel movies. You can do, I don't know, maybe Avatar 2, maybe.
Yeah, you might.
What else? What?
I said you might. Avatar might pull.
But I get what Hassan means too. It's just not the same. There's not the same level of anticipation, and I think one of the reasons also, which is also adds to why it sucks to go see movies in theaters, is the smartphone. I mean, you know so much before going in, and then when you get there, there's literally people on their phone during the film. So the experience is just lessened beforehand and during, so it's just, I love midnight movies, and I don't think I even attempted to go to The Rise of Skywalker. I'm trying to remember. I know I went to Last Jedi at midnight, but I think Rise of Skywalker was the only one I didn't. I think
someone will come along.
So
like some dudes like Bezos or Elon Musk or something and buy AMC they'll specialize it somehow. But I mean, I don't think people are going to let AMC fail. It won't be AMC anymore. But all those locations will probably, because like the same thing happened with Toys R Us. So it'll be one of those things where I think AMC is announcing that to kind of put themselves up on the market in a very passive way of saying, look, anybody interested, because we're walking away from this. There's a very big possibility that that's what they're trying to do.
Honestly, the movie studio should just buy them.
Well, movie stars won't be the same without movie theaters, so that they will buy them as a last.
And television has already stepped up in so many ways to fill the void of movie. And I'm not even talking. I'm talking before this particular situation happened. Television. I mean, ever since Game of Thrones and say maybe The Expanse and shows like that, you've been able to see the money on the screen on television, and it's so
for sure.
They will the Hollywood for their feature films will have to do something substantial. This will probably be a wake up call for them, that they have to do something substantial to keep the theater atmosphere alive in order to
I think so.
So we'll see. Might not be as bad as we think.
Yeah, I hope not, because I still want to go see films
I
in
agree with
theater.
No, I'm between the two of you. I'm with Steve. Let's not go. But I'm with you, Latham. Like, well, every now and then, let's go.
As long as I can pick my audience or fill it with friends. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
But hey, maybe that's the answer. Rent out theaters for groups of people. I mean, like, people already do that at the small ones, but I would rent it out for 200 people. And
check out on YouTube, man. There is a big boom for home theaters. People building their own home theaters. And I'm talking about the bells and whistles with inverted seating and the whole 9 yards.
Of course.
So everybody still wants that experience. They just want to control the environment.
They want to control the environment. Exactly.
My last point on it too, you just reminded me with what you said before about Endgame. There's a Facebook page for Marvel, and today I just watched. It's the scene in Endgame where they come through the portals and have the big battle, but they have the audience reactions on it of a packed house, and it's awesome to hear that while they're watching these things happen in Endgame. Because I saw Endgame with my daughter, but in the theater, but it was half full or whatever, and there wasn't big reaction. So to hear that was really cool to have them put that on Facebook and be able to watch that.
I saw it opening night, and that awesome. Scene was amazing. But when Steve Rogers picked up
Mjolnir,
I can never pronounce it. When he picks up, I don't care how many times I hear it pronounced, I can never pronounce it. When he picks up Thor's hammer, it was pandemonium in there.
There's a big woo. It's really,
and everybody
really cool.
kind of, there's a hush when you see the hammer come off the ground, and then it hits Thanos, and there's kind of a hush, like what? And then it zips back into Steve Rogers' hands, and it was it. And I didn't hear dialogue for another 5 minutes after that.
It's a good point. Really fun to watch that.
Yeah,
really enjoyed it.
All right, so today's feature film is Green Room.
Skins is some at every shop.
They're not like burning crosses or anything, right? Like we just play rock.
I play earlier stuff, heavier stuff.
You call the cops.
Fuck that.
Hey, stop, motherfucker!
This is everybody who knows.
Yeah, including the band.
Knows what?
Manageable. From here on out, not a single name gets added unless they have red laces.
Hey! Down there, dipshit fashion punk clown motherfuckers!
Turn around!
Shazbot!
What? Who is that?
Odin himself. I don't know when I was gonna ruin the crime scene.
Oh. Thought we'd leave a new one.
It's funny. You were so scary at night.
Ooh.
Green Room by Jeremy Saulnier. Running time of 95 minutes. Poster tagline, nobody leaves. A punk band books a gig at an out-of-the-way club, and before they can leave, they witness something they were never supposed to see and are kept against their will. Fighting their way to freedom, they use every and anything at their disposal, only they didn't count on the club's owner, looking to keep quiet secrets of his own, to be willing to do anything to ensure no one ever finds out. Okay. I reviewed this film this morning and forgot I watched it probably a year and a half ago originally, and had forgotten a good portion of it. But man, what a fucking good movie!
It's a unique film, and that's why I like this director. How do you pronounce his last name?
Saulnier.
Saulnier. There's just a sense of menace in this movie that feels so real and next doorish that's bothersome to me. And I had heard about the film from others before I watched it. And, I think it took me a while to watch it because of the way it was described to me. And it's powerful. It's a powerful, unique film. I liked it.
Yeah, it's funny, I understand why you would sort of probably back away from it initially, because I know you're not a big horror movie fan. And I know that this movie gets tagged as horror, and that sort of bothers me because it's not really a horror film.
No, it's a horror situation.
Right. It's horrific things happen, and it's, horrible situations, but this is not a horror film by any stretch of the imagination.
No, it's human beings dealing with bad human beings and doing the best to find their way out, or in some cases not find their way out. And it's, for lack of a more cliche term, it's just raw. The whole film is raw, and never for a minute do you not believe what on screen actually happened, and you're watching a documentary or something. You want to know what's going to happen next after every news scene, and that's something that should be easily done when making films, but a lot of people don't know how to do that, and this guy does.
Son?
I can't really argue with that. The issue, it's not a really issue. The thing about this movie is I've been in this situation
really
tons of times. Not to that degree by any stretch of the imagination, but I've played some hostile clubs,
Okay.
And I've been in some really grody kind of green rooms or waiting areas without the murders, because there have been no murders in my experience.
That's good.
Excellent.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I feel that's an accomplishment as well. Watching the setup to that, and kind of knowing that there's going to be, that things are going to escalate very quickly and very badly, really just filled me with an unease that kind of never went away. But it was so overwhelming that the movie had a very visceral effect on me. The first time I saw it, which was a couple of years ago. This time I watched it, I remember just feeling like dread whenever you see something like one of the catch-alls or something like that happens that escalates the situation. Like, I didn't realize when I first saw it, without too many spoilers, but when I first saw it, how close they were all to getting out. If it hadn't been for that, I forgot my cell phone. They were moments away, so none of it could have happened. That was actually more poignant the second viewing than it was because I think the first time is just a stimuli overload, and the second time is a little more analytical. And the second time I was like, oh man, none of this had to happen. And then after watching Patrick Stewart as Picard, and coming back to him in this role. The man's a great actor. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, Patrick Stewart will kill you if he has to. He will have you killed if he has to.
Yeah, Jeremy's experiences, which is what he really draws, his personal experiences, what he really draws from for the background of the show, from the movie, is he was in punk bands and stuff as a young man. And so, toured with punk bands. So he knows this world so well, and it clearly comes across. One of the things I noticed watching it this morning, up until the event that starts us down, starts the ball rolling, his depiction of that scene, of the punk scene, and it brought me back because it reminded me a lot of that world. I was peripheral to that world a little bit in my youth, and so it was nice to see someone treat it realistically without all the sort of tropes that you've seen of, skinheads and punk music and, punk concerts and all the typical stuff you would normally get in a more mainstream version of this. And I was glad he just, it was a vehicle rather than being the focal point of the film.
Yeah. Oh, their tour van.
Oh yeah. All that stuff.
The Scooby the mystery machine that they were driving around in. Yeah, it is. the fact that it wasn't a bustling club, it wasn't like a growing enterprise. It was like this really rinky, hole in the wall place. People packed in.
Yeah, it's a shithole in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. Yeah, and that helps to make it even more terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been to so many of those. It's also those people are terrifying. Like people like that, people who live on the fringes, those kind of underground, seedy. What do we call them? We call them like do dirt individuals. These willing to do anything kind of individuals. They're horrifying. And these people captured. I've met real life people like that, and some of these. I don't know how many of these people were actually actors, or some of them were stunt cast for it, but they all were very convincingly, on the underside of society kind of individuals. So that was depicted really well. That was very convincing.
Yeah, and that group, that group of skinheads, and that as a rule, they have that sort of drive. They have that thing to earn their red laces. So there's that thing that exists anyway, that exists to push them to go over the line and join the ranks of their brothers, exert violence upon someone in order to make their bones, or to get up to be considered an equal among their peers.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say never for a second. Like when you see the big crowd scene when they play, when the Ain't Rights play. I mean, you're just looking through that crowd and you're like, where are they getting these extras from? Because no one looks out of place. Every one of these people looks like a horrible skinhead, and that's not that's not, if you're a filmmaker, that's not easy to do that. You get one person out of place who isn't involved in the crowd scene well, and you can ruin it or diminish the power of that scene. But when they start playing Nazi punks fuck off, I mean, it's just, you're just like, oh fuck, this is dreary. So,
which is hysterical.
I mean,
considering the thing that they're in, and obviously the band did that to poke the bear to begin with. So
and that's what's cool. They play it and it's not received well, but then the next song is
right.
So it's
right.
they can forgive and forget instantly.
Well, it's also to show you that the crowd's not really all that locked to what's being said on stage. They're just in for the visceral,
the noise,
the slamming and stuff. So as soon as they were placated, they were not a problem.
Right.
And like I said, it just wasn't an issue until they saw something they weren't supposed to see, because they were paid and out the door.
I know. So close.
Which just makes it all so much more tragic, actually.
Yeah. So Patrick Stewart decided that he was going to do this movie. Apparently, immediately after he finished the script, he was at his country home in the UK, and he knew he wanted to do it because as soon as he finished the script, the first read through, he was so noticeably unsettled that he walked around, locked up his house, set his security system, and poured himself a scotch.
Yeah. And then realized he was going to play the reason that happened. So.
Yes, exactly. Well, and that's the thing, man. And this is a note I actually have further down, but I mean, he is fucking mesmerizing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the whole scene, and Saulnier played this so perfectly. He said when he shot the scene early on, when it's Anton Yelkin talking to him through the door, and the two guys are having that conversation while the last band is wrapping up. So, but you can hear Darcy, but you just sort of barely above the music.
Yeah, you don't see him.
Right. And Saulnier said he had a camera on both sides of the door, so he was shooting both sides of the conversation. But he knew he was never going to use hardly any of the Patrick Stewart footage.
Yeah.
Because he wanted all that weight to carry through just on the fact of his voice, and it just that soft delivery, and he's trying, it's almost hypnotic. He's lulling you into this sense of, relaxing you and getting you to a place where you're like, oh, okay, I believe you. Here, I'll give you the gun, and you'll let me go. Yeah. Meanwhile, he's got everyone in the crew working to build something else, and it's
they're digging graves outside.
I mean, just absolutely amazing. to see him in something like this alone is just kind of amazing.
Has he ever played a bad guy in any other film?
That's a great question.
A couple of times. He was he's kind of the bad guy. Well, he's a pawn of the bad guys in Life Force.
Oh God, Life Force.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
He plays Sejanus in I, Claudius when he had hair.
Oh my God. And
Sejanus actually took over, kind of took control of the Senate and was railroading Tiberius, and it was a pretty big role for him.
I mean,
and he was a kind of a sinister guy in that, and that was way early in his career.
I mean, technically, Picard is just a narcissistic planetary diplomat, right? So he's kind of a bad guy for the entire Star Trek series.
That's a hot take.
I mean, it's all your point of view. If you're on a
shots fired,
and in comes these prime directive violating fucks, he's the bad guy.
So conspiracy theory.
Yes, that's another
awful
one.
Film.
Oh, I like that movie.
Oh man,
wow. That's a bad movie. Please pick that movie one time, and we will have a nice old discussion.
Yeah, that's right in your wheelhouse too.
That's a little tantalizing.
Roberts trash flick. Is that the one
that's
you're talking
the one.
about?
Yes.
Oh, this sounds tangential. We better move back to green room.
It says he was also a bad guy in something called Masterminds.
Oh yeah, that's the Jonathan Frakes movie, right?
Yeah, there's Toy Soldiers.
It says directed by Roger Christian.
Oh, my bad. Masterminds. Yeah.
There is a film called Toy Soldiers where he plays a bad guy, and I think
Frakes?
No, Patrick Stewart.
Stewart's the bad guy in Toy Soldiers.
Yeah,
Toy Soldiers is
where he takes over a school. He takes over a military school or something like that. Years ago.
Either way, this is clearly his most evil role. So
somebody wrote an article saying that Patrick Stewart played the most evil guy the most evil character of the decade.
in Green Room.
Yeah, for that decade.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair.
So
I'd like to compare that to a couple of other movies, but that stands out.
Yeah, that'd be a good discussion. Other bad guys from this decade, but
Mortan Joe. Everything for me always comes back to Fury Road. Sorry.
Yeah.
All of the actors who were band members played their own instruments, including
and you could tell,
including
that nothing drives me more crazy than knowing that guy is not playing that instrument.
Well, two of the ain't rights. Two of them did know how to play their instruments. Anton Yelkin and I think not the drummer, but
the singer,
bass player, the singer maybe.
Yeah.
But
I thought Anton was playing the bass.
Yeah,
I think he's
was Anton the bass player?
I think he's the bass player.
So Alia Shawkat needed to learn her part,
right?
And the drummer had never touched a drum set before.
Yeah, but they both look pretty accomplished.
Yeah, they look well. And then in all fairness, the camera really never lingers on them too long.
Of course, yeah, it's music video footage shooting.
Yeah.
This is Anton Yelkin's last theatrically released film before he died.
Right.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah, and watching this movie, I was just struck about halfway through it, just how awful that really was, because he is so good in this. He he's been kicking around Hollywood for 10, 12, 15 years probably. I don't know if he started acting as a really young child, but we've all seen him in a lot of stuff, and I never really felt like he had a chance to really shine before. And I really feel like that this movie would have been, should have been a huge breakout for him. He's just great in this.
It's almost for the, I don't know if you'd call it that's the wrong way of describing it. It's almost for the best that the Star Trek movies ended, like with the third one right after he passed away.
Right.
Because he does shine in those three movies. Whatever my feelings of those three movies are, he does it.
Yeah.
And especially the third one, because everybody's parts were elevated to actual meaty roles, as opposed to just being, visual props for the Kirk and Spock show. He really had a lot to do in the third one. He really came through in the third one. So it's pretty tragic that we weren't going to get him as part of the crew anymore.
I need to watch those.
Yeah. Maybe you don't.
They're all right.
No, there are very few movies out there that I'm going to look at and just say I don't need to watch this. I mean, someday, who knows? Someday maybe we'll even cover Crystal Skull, and I'll watch it then.
Wow, that's a tough one. Yeah.
See, that's going to be a shame because every episode until that episode is just going to be me anticipating. Is the next episode going to be Crystal Skull? Am I going to finally get to see Steve sees Crystal Skull?
The first and last words spoken in the film, same word.
Yep.
I thought.
Yeah. Fuck.
Nope. Shit.
Oh well.
Who gives a shit?
I escalated it.
Apparently, they had built an elaborate dog puppets for the sequence where Imogen Poots gets attacked by the dog on the stage, and they ended up not using it. Instead, just having the actor, stunt people, real dogs, and a mic stand made out of foam. So that's good. I'm glad because that would any kind of use of
you can tell.
Yeah. Even in quick cuts, sometimes it's tough.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What do you think the significance was of showing, I guess it was the dying dog, right? Of showing him walk the road alone.
Yeah.
There were a couple of moments where they deliberately cut to the dog just trotting up the road, with the leash dragging behind it.
Right. Let me circle back to that because I have something.
Okay.
I have something else that actually ties into that. So
yep.
There were 30 digital visual effect shots in this movie, which I found interesting.
Yeah, you never notice any of them, which is the way it should be.
None of them were the makeup effects for his arm. That was all practical effects.
That was all practical. Jesus, yeah, and that's grisly.
Oh, dude, that's he goes. And
I don't know how he was still conscious after that. I know he was the star. I know he's got a little bit of plot armor on him.
That's one of my notes, buddy. That is one of my points. That was one of the things when I first watched the film. That was one of the things that stuck out most to me. It's like, listen, and I've had this conversation. I can't remember, Hassan, if it was with you or with Latham. There's a series of books that I read by Mark Greaney, who writes these sort of Jason Bourne-like spy novels. So lots of action, lots of stuff. The very first novel, he takes so much physical damage in the last act of the book that I had a hard time believing that he would have been A, functional, or B, even conscious from how much damage he had taken. And it's one thing for him to be hyped up on adrenaline and all this other crap, but I really felt the way that they described the wounds that they described him getting were very specific. And I just felt like, he wouldn't be moving. Like physically, he would not be able to turn. He would not be able to move that arm. And there were certain things about that pulled me out. And that's exactly what happened in this, because when they show the amount of damage to his arm, when they pull back, when they pull him back in the room, because you don't see it, and it's funny too, because I thought I remembered when I watched it, when I was watching it the second time, I thought I remembered a scene of his arm outside the door and them showing them doing what they're doing to his arm, but they never do. He just pulls him back in, and you then see the aftermath, which is brilliant.
Worse. That's worse, not seeing it.
Always worse.
I mean, in fairness, he's never the same after that happens. He is kind of a shadowy. He's got a shadowy kind of presence after that, like where he's fading in and out of.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Rational consciousness, or
but when he goes into Odin mode, I don't know. When him and Imogen,
that's like Denzel Washington's version of Man on Fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Towards the end, when he takes that bullet to the chest, and he goes on another maybe 25 minutes, and you're like, I get it, but
yeah, exactly.
I don't think so.
Okay, I just want to make a point about how the director uses violence in the film, and we know it's a rough film to watch, and there's some grisly stuff, but every time you see something violent, it's that classic part of moving the story forward. It's not just gratuitous. And I wrote down a bunch. Obviously, the worst is when he pulls his arm in from out of the hallway. Now you know how awful these people are and what kind of situation they're stuck in. So that's moving that forward. The scene where I think is it Imogen or the other girl who, when she slices the bouncer open?
That's Imogen, because the other girl's dead.
That's Imogen, yeah.
Oh,
Right.
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Not Al. Yes, it was Imogen.
I mean, it's just it's a quiet, horrible moment, but it's just like she's just like, you're done, buddy, and this is how we're gonna do it. And you just see it for like 3 seconds, him open up, and it's just to me, that was really affecting to me. And then obviously when the dog eats the one guy, and they show a lot of the close up of the dog going at his neck.
Yeah.
That didn't even feel gratuitous. That just felt like, yep, you're in this awful situation. But the one that always gets me, it's very quick, but it's rough and it moves the plot along, is when their friend comes in to help them, and he's right behind the bar and he's talking, and then boom, he gets his face blown off by the other bartender. I mean, that's just,
that's one of the only two actual genuine depictions of like contact violence.
Correct.
Because it's that scene, and then the scene where Pooch actually shoots the guy from behind.
Yes.
Right. Because everything else is a really quick cutaway. Like, it's implied violence.
Yeah.
But you don't actually see it. When Shawkat gets killed, the dog, they just show the dog tackler, and then you just see everybody's reaction to what's happening.
Yeah.
But you don't actually, and it's worse. Because now you're imagining.
Everyone knows what a dog attack, or in their mind can imagine what a dog attack might be like. So
and you want that character to make it too, and you're just like, she's done, she's got no chance. And every time someone dies, it's like, fuck, they're running out of people, and the bad guys are losing nobody. That's why the dread is just builds and builds. And
right,
he's not a gratuitous director. He just wants you to know that these people are badly hurt and badly killed and by awful people, and that's the story here. And that's, again, that's hard to toe that line, especially, this isn't a true horror film, but in making a suspense horror thriller, whatever you want to call it, it's very hard to not show enough and show too much. And I think he nails it with this film.
Agreed. So have either of you seen his first film, Murder Party?
Nope. It's on my list though.
It's on Netflix. So
yep. All of his movies are on Netflix.
Oh, okay, great. Obviously Hold the Dark he made for Netflix, but
right.
So I had watched Murder Party with Deirdre and I because it was a horror film that we had not seen. We just stumbled across it, and I didn't even realize that it was this guy. So we had actually seen it, probably saw this first out of all of them.
Wow. Okay.
And so this morning I watched Green Room and I watched Blue Ruin. I watched both.
Okay.
And afterwards I had a few minutes, so I just kind of I threw Murder Party back on because there was I had an internal question I wanted answered. So it's interesting, between Murder Party and Blue Ruin, Jeremy spent 6 years as a cinematographer. He shot about 6 or 7 film projects just as a cinematographer, not directing. And I think you can see it makes a tremendous difference. His sort of command and his vision of what he wants are clearly much more defined as you get into Blue Ruin and Green Room. And watching the two right after each other, you definitely see some of the things that are clear to be his sort of trademark things.
Yeah.
I have not watched Hold the Dark yet.
Yeah.
Watching Blue Ruin and Green Room back to back, it's funny how visually similar they are. And I know that he did them back to back. And the reason he said that he did Green Room was that he felt that he had built up all this cred off of Blue Ruin. Green Room was a movie he wanted to make. And he felt like that if he made another film and it was either a failure or it didn't hold up to what people were expecting of him, he thought that he might not get an opportunity again to make this kind of film and have the backing that he got for it. So that's the reason he actually jumped in to make Green Room now, because he's like, you know what? I may not get a chance to make this later, so I'm going to make it now. And I'm glad he did. This movie ended up being on 30-some of the major critics in the U.S. Top 10 list that year.
Oh, yeah.
And to see a movie like this end up on a critical top 10 list is always something. You've always achieved something.
It's just it's unique in the fact that it's, even if you know what it's about going into it, it's still, even if you know the major plot and how it gets to the next point, the point where things go bad, it still remains interesting. You're still waiting to see how the plotting will work, how the geography of the building they're in works, and the surrounding woods. I think that was interesting and played well. It's a movie that plays to logic, and I think that's one reason I like it.
Yeah, there's the other thing watching it this morning that I absolutely adored the filmmaker for doing this. So when the band is coming in to set up to play, the guy tells them they can't leave their stuff in the hallway because the owner has this thing about the hallway, being a fire hazard. And there's a throwaway line later when Patrick Stewart's character walks down the hallway away from the green after the conversation with Anton Yelkin, and he looks down and the drum case is sitting there, and he's like, "Why is this here? It's a fire hazard." And he just keeps walking. And I'm like, I love that they put that in there.
Yeah. That's
Meanwhile, he's got a full-on meth lab underneath everything.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. The movie's kind of hard for me because it's really well done, and we've used the word visceral a bunch of times, and that's kind of the best way to describe it. It's so familiar. Like, all of it is so familiar that it just and it's, and that movie, which is probably where the movie came from, is so many nightmare scenarios that you have in your head. Like, it's the exact thing that when you see a room like that and you're kind of stuck there while there's all this like kind of bustling energy going on in the next.
You start looking at the stains on the floor and you're like, huh.
Yeah. And you're like, what if we get locked in here and they murder us? That's just one of those stupid throwaway that one of your band members is gonna muse over, and then you're gonna get mad at that guy for making everything negative, and you're trying to think about the set. And when you watch that happen, you're like, yeah. That also, they getting locked in there, and the fact that they weren't gonna come out until the cops came,
right?
Which kind of helps the believability. Yeah, no one's gonna be like, not one of them was like, hey, let's just trust the guy and get out of here. All of them were like, all right, what kind of leverage do we have in this room,
right,
to keep us as safe for as long as humanly possible? And that's another positive thing, because most people are in bands because they get along with each other. It's a choice thing. So a lot of times in movies, you'll have people just have, because conflict is kind of, they believe conflict is drama. You'll have them all kind of turning on each other and cursing each other out and not listening to one another and having all these like kind of social defects that kind of stand out. And most of the time, people who play in bands or whatever are a tight unit. Now, they're not an SAS unit. They're not going to be able to survive something like this, but at least they trust each other. They're gonna band together in a situation like this. They're not gonna fall apart.
Right.
And the fact that he didn't go for that trope, actually kind of makes the film even more gut-wrenching when so many of them don't make it.
Right. They knew it was them, the four of them against the world, essentially, is what it
exactly
came down to. They were the only four. The only people they knew in the room were those four. And, and that too, that's, one of the reasons he had them sort of keep Imogen Poots' character, Amber, sort of at arm's length for a good portion of that. Until it kind of reached a certain point. I think basically after they tried to escape from the room the first time, until she was kind of more, an accepted part, or it might have been when she opened up Justin. That might have been the trigger to that.
Yeah.
But I think also something like that would also serve to make the four of them go, dude, this bitch is fucking.
Yeah, she's just as crazy as everybody.
House rat crazy. There's a problem here.
Well, and the other good thing is that Shockhat's character never trusted her. Every time she said something, the first person to knock her down was Shockhat. So that actually also plays into the women don't trust women kind of situation.
Yes,
and it makes more sense. It's when you're going to get nervous, your anxieties are going to come out, and they turn on the people that they don't know. They don't turn on themselves. So the movie's just hard for me.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it on a level that you like anything that's well made and well done. But it was an experience. I remember when we suggested it last week, when we suggested going into this one. I remember I kind of made because I remember
I gotta revisit.
Yeah,
I have to go back there.
Yeah, exactly. And it was. I mean, I enjoyed it. I was happy to do it. I'm glad. I'm glad I was able to see different things this time.
Yeah.
And observe it with a different eye. But it was. I'm not gonna run back in there anytime soon.
Back into the green room. Yeah, I actually have a note here saying Pat's wounds are the only sticking point, but forgivable. And then I have in quotes duct tape because he's saved by the duct tape, which is of course the universal bandage and fix all. So
yeah, because after that he lost that arm. His musician days are over.
Oh yeah,
he was a bassist. He's never using that arm again, and most likely he got an infection. Running around, jumping
duct tape,
going through the woods after that. Yes,
duct tape.
And denim. Didn't he cover it in a denim jacket?
Disinfectant.
Did people have a problem with that he was too injured to do anything?
No, that was one of my personal things. It's been mentioned online, things about it. When I was reading up, things have been mentioned about it. Also, this was kind of funny. I saw, I was reading, I ended up in, I don't know if it was a Reddit room or if it was something else, some commentary about it. But people were wondering why, when they come out onto the loading dock towards the end, and it's Amber and Shawkat and Yelkin, and Amber's got the gun, and she comes out, and they all just start firing at her with the pistols from behind the truck.
Yeah.
Right.
And Darcy yells, "Don't shoot her." Well, everyone was like assuming that she was talking about Amber. And I was like, well, why would he say not to? And they want to know why that he was telling them not to shoot Amber. Then they were trying to kind of build this sort of conspiratorial thing about how Amber was, part of that group from the beginning. And they, she was really kind of just a mole in there. And I'm like, and when you go back and watch it, he's not talking about, well, it's not talking about her at all.
Sam.
It's talking about Shawkat because he had made a point of saying, don't shoot any of them because the evidence has to match.
Yeah.
There can't be any bullets. If there are any bullets in any of them, we're screwed.
That's another thing I did not notice until watching it this time. That they were trying to, they very blatantly set up the siphoning scene in the very beginning.
Yes.
That they siphon gas, and then that they were trying to make it look like they were trying to siphon gas, and they all got ravaged by dogs.
Yep.
And it's not really made 100% clear that that's because they are speaking in a shorthand. When Patrick Stewart is rolling the plan out and his minions are not that bright. They make another point of that they're they're useful tools, but they're not that swift.
Yeah.
The visual evidence at the end, when you see how it's all coming together, and then Anton ties it together, they're making it look like it was our fault that we were trespassing.
Yep.
But if you're not fully locked in and paying attention, you're not going to really get what all of this whole evening was about.
Right.
The lengths that they were trying to go to kind of keep all suspicion away from them in that club. So again, like I said before, watching it again really helped me kind of understand it tied together much more neatly in the second viewing.
Yeah, Saulnier is clearly, especially after watching, like I said, Blue Ruin and Green Room together, he's very much about not giving you everything. He's not handing you everything. He wants you to make connections. He wants you to fill in the gaps yourself. He's giving you enough information for the story, and he wants you to kind of fill in those spaces with, whatever you think in your mind happened between here and there.
Yeah.
And he's very much about letting the audience, not dumbing it down, making it say, here's the story, here's everything you need. The rest is up to you, enjoy. And I did.
It worked.
And then, so my last thing I have is, and this is circling back to your dog thing. So, it's no secret that I'm a big animal guy. I'm not one of those guys who, every time they show an animal injured on screen in a film or something, I don't know, get up and shout, "How dare you!" And then make sure that the credits say no animals were harmed. Listen, it's part of the story. I fully, listen, if this was the 60s or the 70s, I might have a question. Nowadays, there's no way an animal's getting hurt making a movie. So I never think about that kind of thing.
Right.
But the scene, like this, Hassan, this leads back to your point about showing the dog walking back up. I think that he was definitely making sort of an analogy with them coming back. And I think that you didn't, I think that he wanted it to be you to sort of have everyone have their own idea of where that dog was going to end up. I think they wanted you to be guessing, well, is the dog going to get spotted by a cop driving by? Is the dog going to run out on the road and get hit by a car? Is the dog just going to fall down and die out on his own in the woods somewhere? I think he wanted that left open. And then with what he eventually gives you with it walking up and the two of them there, and they're worried about the dog attacking him, and all the dog wants to do is get back to his master. And he lies down and puts his that moment is soul crushing when the dog lays his head down in the arm of that dead guy. And even though you hate that guy, that moment completely redeems everything any of those dogs did in that entire film.
See, I thought that was just making the point of allegiance, that whether you serve good or bad, you serve it, and that's what those dogs did. They killed.
That's a great point.
Some people you were rooting for that got killed by the dogs, but the dogs are just servants of bad masters.
Yeah, it's just it's just a tool.
Yep.
Yeah. Just
now, was that the dog on the road?
Yes.
Or was that the dog that he chained up because he had it?
So that's the one that he left for them, the one that had been shot, and they gave the shot.
Okay.
He's like, this will get him about another hour. So then they took him inside, but remember they set the feed back up again. And so the dog ran out from the two punks, from Daniel and the other guy. And then
that makes a lot more sense, because the way it's kind of cut, you see him chain up the other dog.
Yes.
Because he's got two dogs, right?
Correct.
So he's chaining up the other dog.
Yeah.
He's speaking German to the dog. He's giving him directions.
Right. He's having him chew on the bodies at the scene.
There could have been a scene where that dog passes the dog that's chained up, so you know that that's a different dog. Because when I think about it, it makes sense. But when you see it and you see him dragging the leash, it could easily be that the dog got loose, from the other chain. So now I get it. It works, and it makes that whole scene ties together really nicely. Now that I understand that that's the dog from the road. But the thing that confused me is that you watching him tie the other dog up, you just assume that the dog just got loose off of its chain.
Right.
And it just came over to the master. So, I mean, it works. It's fine. But that was the only thing that was kind of confusing to me.
Gotcha.
And it is pretty fucking sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a that's a great point, Latham. And that's one of the things that I generally don't catch. There's a lot of thematic stuff in films that I just don't get, just because, until it's pointed out to me. Just because that's not the way I process movies. You went to school for this, and you're sort of built a little differently in that.
Right.
And I that's one of the reasons I like, talking to you guys about this stuff, is because I know I'm very much a amateur film watcher, from the standpoint that, I look at films and it's like, this is a good movie. This is a bad movie. This is fine. I have a scale of like three things. I have a movie that I love and I like, or I'll watch again. I have one that if I never see or hear from it again, I have absolutely no problem. And then I have those that are like, they're fine. They can exist. If I see them again, I see them again, but I'm never going to go out of my way to watch it. So I'm a much more, if not for that third sort of spot, I would call it almost a binary sort of decision-making process when it comes to films. It's yes and no. Obviously I have that sort of extra level of stuff that I really enjoy. Alien, Platoon, the Braveheart, those kinds of things. So yeah, that's one thing I do like about definitely having you on here, Latham, because you supply a vision of film that I just don't have.
Well, I would say also with this one though, I know there's themes going on there, but while you're watching it the first time, it's almost like you don't have time to process them or think about them because you're on the edge of your seat and just trying to see who's going to make it out alive here. And then when you watch it the second time, you notice stuff like the dog, the desert island comments, other little things. And that's, I like movies where you got to dig the director's themes out of it or figure out if he even has any or whatever. So this one was hard to catch a lot of the stuff. And that's why the whole violence thing, that's the one I concentrated on. And from what I've read, it seems like that was his intent.
Yeah, it's, and a comment that Hassan made earlier about the visceral feeling of the film, and that, that might be the reason why this gets that horror tag so often, is because it shares a sensibility about it that most horror films try to achieve in order to be successful. You just don't usually have, bright, shiny horror films. There just aren't that many of them, and you get this kind of feel in a movie. I think it very easily or often can get tagged as a horror film just because it's gritty, visceral. It tears at you a little bit. It's tough to watch at points. So it does share some of those same character qualities as a horror film, but it's definitely not a horror film.
No.
Yeah, very.
It's a thriller. It's a violent.
Also,
thriller.
like just a.
You know what I think?
The guy in the beginning who kind of interviews them. You go you find out you travel a great distance or whatever, so that this guy can sit you down, and then he whips out a MP3 recorder or something and interviews you in the middle of his living room, and you realize that guy isn't affiliated with anything or anybody, and that you just went all this way. And then he sets you up on a gig. He promises you a gig, which is supposed to bring you money, which is supposed to be your gas money or your travel money to be able to get back home or to keep going. And you find out that that's dried up. But he's still going to use your interview to further whatever enterprise that he's on. All of that is so real. All of that is so world related that you immediately buy
for sure.
the entire set of circumstances that led them to that.
Yeah, great point. The setup in the first 10 minutes is vital to you buying what happens after that, because it feels.
And he doesn't rely on just one mishap. There's a series of there's a series of fake outs and disingenuousness from all the people that they're surrounded by. You already know that these guys walked into this situation not trusting the person who sent them there, not trusting the place that they're playing in, so when things start to skew just a little bit awkward, the script really has no room for the one or two typical horror movie fools that just walk themselves into their own fate. Everybody's already on wired for sound by the time things start to go wrong. So that also helps make it more believable.
Agreed.
Yeah, he's. I noticed that actually. I actually noticed that more so in Blue Ruin when I was watching it. You get to a point near the beginning of the film. At one point, because it was playing on my laptop, and so I happened to glance over and I noticed that I was at a point in the film, and I looked at it, and it was only 14 minutes in, and I'm like, how have we gotten this far along, and we're only 14 minutes in? And I think the ability of some directors to be able to be so efficient in their storytelling in a short period of time and get you everything that you need and everywhere you need to be to understand everything that's coming in that's a real skill.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I agree.
It's one way to tell a story. So.
Yeah. One last thing I found about Jeremy Saulnier just makes me more anxious than ever. His next film listed as in pre-production on IMDb, it's listed as Rebel Ridge, a high-velocity thriller that explores systemic American injustice through bone-breaking action sequences, suspense, and dark humor.
Okay.
That's loaded.
Well,
yeah.
All his films.
Okay. That's loaded with so many implications of what that could be about.
And it's got Don Johnson, John Boyega, James Cromwell, and James Badge Dale.
Yeah, he really nails
Jesus Christ.
Great, cool casts. So
yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to that. Yeah. So I guess we should probably go down the tubes.
And again, the internet is not something that you just dump something on. It's not a big truck. It's a series of tubes.
All right, so green room posters. We open with the U.S. Advance poster. They kept a pretty similar vein running through all the posters for the different campaigns, domestically and abroad. really like this advance poster because just that it gives you that sense of dread.
Yeah.
From a guy that everyone kind of universally adores in general.
Is that Jean-Luc Picard peeking in on you in the bathroom stall? What is this all about?
Jean-Luc, your tortoiseshell rims look fantastic.
And it is it just spells menace. It really is. Like you cannot mistake that there's something really terrible about this guy peeking in at you, you know?
Well, I mean, yeah, especially with the text that's involved.
Right. And the two shadowy figures behind him.
Just the "no longer my concern" line is the one that just just sends it home. From there, we get the advance character posters, which I'm actually kind of surprised we got from a film of this level. You usually generally only see stuff like this with films that have either large casts of superstars or big budget films, and they have their P&M budget is ridiculous, so they'll put out a series of advanced posters that focus just on one guy. So to see them do this for these three actors for this film is really interesting because obviously A24 was very much behind the film and wanted to get that information out there. I mean, clearly you have an asset like Patrick Stewart on your film. You want to take as much advantage of as you can.
Yeah, they're interesting. I don't know. I think there's a lot with the lettering on there. It kind of betrays it a little bit, but it's cool that they did it for this small of a film and wanted to do more posters.
Yeah. So then we have the U.S. style A poster, which is the standard release. It's the same image as the standard release poster. I just looking down to the bottom, I realized that the credits aren't on. So this is actually also a teaser, but this is the standard release image of this poster, and it's the design was supposed to mimic the cover of London Calling.
Right.
It's a little homage to that shot, to that photograph. But to me, with the pose that he's in, he actually reminds me more of the DRI guy, the Dirty Rotten Imbeciles logo.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. Of the guy skanking, with the legs up and the arms up. It actually reminds me more of that than it does London Calling.
Interesting.
Which is definitely more fitting as far as I'm concerned. So this next poster, clearly hand drawn, but this was an officially created poster. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that Green Room may have done some sort of contest with artists to have a poster done, and then the winner would be chosen by the filmmaker. I know they do this a lot in the UK, so I'm not 100% sure I put this in as US style B, but I'm not 100% sure that this wasn't a UK release poster as part of some special promotion. But still, I like this. It gives you everything you want. It gives you it's the shot of him as when he comes in, or where the two guys bust into the room.
Yeah.
Before he turns around with Odin.
Yeah.
Next is the UK quad, composited images from the film.
Yeah.
But effective, and doesn't give anything away. It's just a couple of good pull quotes to get you there. I like the fact that without realizing it, people of course wouldn't know this even if they saw this on the wall. You're never going to notice his completely duct taped arm because it's behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't give much away, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Then we have the French release. This may be a video release. I'm not 100% sure, but there's a note on the side at the bottom on the left that talks about no one under 12, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I thought they had to be fucking higher than that.
Yeah, you don't want a 13-year-old watching this movie.
You wouldn't think so. The next one, interesting, Thailand.
Yeah.
With a knife that doesn't appear in the film.
No.
Yeah.
Strange choices, but that's, what usually happens with a lot of foreign film posters.
Yeah.
This Japanese poster that I found, I really like, actually, because I think it's fun and a little unique. There was another poster posted along with this one that was essentially along the same lines of what we've already seen of the regular release poster images. But this one I thought was fun because it almost reminds me of like the old like newspaper advertisements for films and stuff like that back when we were kids.
For sure.
But I just love that the guy with the the iconic character with the doorway with an arrow, and it's just pointing at a skull. It's like this way to death.
You're dead. Don't bother.
Yeah.
You're dead.
Thanks for coming. You're dead. So then we get into the artist posters. This first one is from a guy who goes by the name 17th and Oak, is the name of his graphic studio. This is remember, Lay, you can turn the poster. You don't have to turn your head. There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Just a fun way of delivering the name of the film and the credits from from the shot in the film.
I like it.
I like this. I like 17th and Oak's work.
That's slick.
I'm a fan of his stuff. I think it's fun.
That is fun.
The next one, again, this may have been part of some contest. This is by Chris Schweizer, and I noticed that he posted this originally, and Saulnier actually picked this up and retweeted it himself.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a comic book. It's great.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of. Like, if there had been a comic book or a graphic novel adaptation of this movie, I feel like this definitely would have been the cover.
Yeah,
for sure.
That would have fit.
So next we have a gentleman by the name of Harris Grundmanis. Does a lot of images like this, all from the alt poster industry. Does a lot of sort of like collaborative, not collaborative, but these shots of a lot of characters bunched together, and sort of I really like this from the way that just his color choices. I love that brick wall behind Patrick Stewart done in just that sort of high teal.
Yeah.
And then that's used as the highlights kind of around everyone as well as the outline effect.
And somehow sells the griminess of the little hole in a wall club for some reason.
It does, and I think that actually has more to do with his actual art style. His line work is actually kind of definitely lends itself to that. It's got almost a little bit of a Bradstreet feel, but not quite as busy.
Yeah. I see that. Yeah, it's really clean.
Yes.
And it's it's coordinated by shape, like Patrick Stewart being the primary shape. That's a good one.
His likenesses are good. His color choices are solid. Just basically go to atonal gray with these teal highlights and then the green highlights. This is a really nice piece. The next one is by a guy named Mickey Edge. I searched, tried to find his actual name, but he goes by Mickey Edge on Instagram and a number of the poster sites. So this is just graphic design fun. As far as I'm concerned, I always love stuff like this when somebody thinks a little outside the box and gives you elements of the movie, and completely locked together put together in lockstep that are just perfect.
Also in a manner that you could not possibly figure out what the film is about, but the elements that are going to be, it's good. There's going to be music. It's going to be music related. And there's going to be a box cutter. It's going to be box
and the entire screen will be filled with blood. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought his choice of a red background for this was odd because I thought for sure putting this together, this would have just a full green.
Yeah, well, that's outside the box too. It's just a word.
Yes.
So that's
agreed.
Cool.
The next one, Oliver Barrett. This guy is a known quantity in the alt poster world. I love this for a number of reasons, not the least of which he's
Grizzly.
He's not only homaging the film, but also Black Flag.
Yep.
Because that's the Black Flag logo.
Yep.
With the slices. I mean, that's just brilliant. And with the way the logo treatment's done, there's so much thought put into this that I guarantee you probably only about 45% of the people who've seen this image really get all the aspects.
Oh, yeah.
of this.
Yeah.
They aren't seeing that Black Flag symbol, just because it's not something that's in their world.
Yeah,
I didn't get that.
I wasn't a Black Flag fan, so I didn't, there are nuances about it. I totally missed until you said something about it. But now I see it. Like I can actually see it. Awesome.
So the next one by Ralph Lombroso.
Hurtful.
Super design based.
Yeah.
Very minimalist.
I'm not liking this one.
I like its simplicity. I'm always been a fan of the minimalist poster movement when done well.
Yeah.
This is actually for a minimalist film. This is actually almost too much information, I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
It's just a super simple representation of, one aspect of the film, but I think it's fine.
Okay.
And then last but not least, one of the friend of the company, Simon Carpenter, did this very lovely digitally painted piece. I think it's his layout is a little strange.
The perspective is a bit off.
Well, it's funny because he uses the pose, but he's not wearing the jacket.
Yeah.
And the guy he drew has hair, but he's got the duct tape on the arm, symbolizing that it's Yelkin, but he didn't draw him in the jacket, which he was wearing at this point.
Right.
In this pose. So if he
strange.
had he used a still, and maybe that's why he took the jacket off him, was because he wanted to show
that he wasn't, that he just didn't cut and paste a still frame.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I think the image would have worked a lot better for me personally if he looked exactly like the character, if he had the jacket on, if he had
shaved head.
Huh?
The shaved head.
Yeah, exactly. So
yes,
it would have kind of been a lot more striking. This just makes me look at everything that it's not there, that it's not in the film. Like, okay,
yeah, and I like his treatment of the title and the actors' names on the wall, but it ends up leaving these sort of large open areas to the lower left and kind of up above him. That it sort of makes them those empty spaces stand out.
Yeah,
unnaturally.
And he should have. I mean, he probably couldn't do it, but he should have kind of reversed the image so that he's looking at the wall, so that balance-wise, it would have balanced out.
Yeah,
because your eye would go over to him. Because now your eye goes all the way to the right to see what he's looking at, and there's nothing over there.
Right. Yeah. Good point, Hassan.
There's a door frame without a door on
it. Exactly.
Yeah. One of the doors has some symbol, and then there's
it's the star in a circle that's on the green room door.
Right, and then so we know that, and then there's this other, what lies behind this other door.
Right.
So. Yeah, it's just strange. It's good, but it's strange.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. So that's all the posters. So we are down to the Martini, where we look at the other films in this director's library: Murder Party, Blue Ruin, and Hold the Dark, and hopefully try and make a logical assessment of where this film might sit in amongst those four. I have seen 3 out of the 4. Latham?
I have only seen this, so I'm going to put this at the top.
Okay. Hassan?
I've seen 3 out of the 4, but I don't remember Blue Ruin as well as I should to be able to comment on it. I just saw this, of course, again, and I saw Hold the Dark, which is it's very much this, very much the strong feeling of this.
But in Alaska.
Yes.
Yes. His style seems established, and I haven't seen his other films, but in watching Green Room, I know watching anything else what I'm going to be getting or looking for, I believe. So
yeah, I think you'll really enjoy Blue Ruin, Latham.
Yeah, that's next on my list. Then I'm probably going to do Murder Party and then the newest one.
Murder Party doesn't leave a lot to be.
Just go into Murder Party knowing that it is what it is.
Yeah, I got you.
But, not a lot of mystery about it, though.
No, but it is actually got a lot. It's got a lot more humor in it than any of his other films.
That's what I read, which is interesting too to see that. So,
and it's almost, after watching the other 2, it's actually arguably it makes it even funnier, because you still see the very early signs of like those things I was talking about earlier, of the things you see him doing more consistently, as far as the telltale shots you get from certain directors, or the way they shoot certain things. You see that very early on, and he hasn't gotten rid of that after his sort of, what I'm going to call his sort of early evolution jump from Murder Party to Blue Ruin. He didn't lose them, he just refined them. So they're there, you can see them, but it's definitely rougher. Seeing that, and then knowing 6 years later we were going to get Blue Ruin, I'm not surprised.
There's a jump in quality.
Absolutely.
You're saying it's okay.
It's not only a jump in quality, but it's a jump in refinement. It's a jump in him, 6 years of cinematography work on other people's films. I think he really honed his look, and he learned a lot in those 6 years. I think it was the early part of the curve, and I really think that he probably picked up a lot of stuff. And once he was able to get back into the director's chair, he took advantage of all that. He made all that learning count.
He also did. I watched. He did a couple episodes of True Detective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the season. I've seen seasons 1 and 2. I haven't seen 3, so I'll be looking for that when I find
3 is, in my opinion, is great.
That's good to hear, because 1 is like one of the best things I've seen in media in a long time. So
yes.
And the less said about 2, the better.
I don't even mind. I know 2 doesn't end very well, but I don't mind it as much as other people do. It's got some good moments in it, but that's a discussion for another episode, right, Steve?
Of course.
That's right. So
we're going up the tubes now.
We're going back up the tubes.
Seems to me like he's getting a little more esoteric, actually. It's especially a movie like Hold the Dark, which is very suggestive, much more suggestive than it is. It still has the same visceral quality, but it's more. I don't even.
Just seems like a strange choice to me with the subject matter. After
it fits his motif. It really does. Once you know that he's, because I watched it without even realizing he was the same director.
Right.
Right.
Oh, cool.
It makes a lot more sense now going over his films again. This movie makes a lot more sense being part of his repertoire.
Right.
But it is, without giving anything away, it is less of a straightforward movie than, say, Green Room. It's more in the lines of Blue Ruin, where it's more the experiences, the substantive kind of surrealistic experiences of the main character.
You're talking about Hold the Dark?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's also the first one of his films that he didn't write. And it's based on an existing novel.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so then it's just, so you're talking about it's just his directorial skills on display there and not his writing. That actually makes a lot more sense, because visually and viscerally, because we paid for that word and we're going to use it as many times this week. It really is in keeping with his style of movie making. But like I was saying, story wise, it's kind of out there. It doesn't match as well as it did. Now, isn't the guy from Blue Ruin? Isn't that the same actor from Green Room?
In Hold the Dark.
So Macon Blair is Jeremy Saulnier's best friend. Macon Blair is in Murder Party. He's the main character in Blue Ruin. And he was Gabe, the guy who worked at the club and was cleaning up, and he's the only other main guy really who lived.
Who got away.
Right, the one that got away in Green Room.
And apparently fulfilled his promise and talked to the police, it is implied.
Yes.
At the end of the film.
Yeah. And Saulnier said that he didn't just give that role to him. He had not planned on Macon being in the film, but Macon wanted to be so badly, wanted to work with him on it. He kind of said, well, where do you see yourself in it? And he had him try out. He had him, make himself earn the part. And he did. So
nice.
So good for him. It works.
Yeah. All right. So that is Green Room. Thanks, guys, as always. I appreciate your time and efforts. I'd also like to send out our thanks to Purple Planet Music once again for their use of their fine opening theme music. Please go to cinementalpod.com for additional content, poster images that accompany all of the Down the Tubes discussions from our episodes. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And we are available just about everywhere now. And so, in the words of our friend Truman Burbank,
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.